Yeah, it's Thursday, 23rd.
What day?
Yeah, we talked, finished the GRE lab, so I think we're okay there. They did some work to try to understand the tunneling, and it's really good to look at. They had a router set up like this, and the tunnel then between these two locations, and they set up the tunnel with IP addressing. So it appears to go here. We know the traffic is literally going like this, but it looks like it's running through this tunnel because we encapsulate it, and the IP addresses makes it look like this LAN is directly talking to this LAN. And we also emphasized there's no security in a GRE tunnel. But it works great if you're running routing protocols through there. I think in the lab I believe they did OSPF, so the GRE tunnels can handle multicasting like a routing protocol like OSPF uses. Alright, then we also talked about BGP. I talked about AS numbers, 32-bit or 64-bit, and how different companies, different corporations can either talk to an ISP or talk to other corporations, and if they need to route traffic between them, they can use BGP to do that. We did a little bit on access control lists too. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's a mess. But BGP, path vector routing protocol. So we talked about you can be single home to the internet, and when you do that, you basically you have a default out, and they send you a default that you use to go out to their network, and you really don't need to do any routing between here. You wouldn't really want to do any routing. You wouldn't want to do that at all. Then you could have a situation where you're multi-homed, so they can send you a default, but you're running like OSPF or something, and you're inside your AS. We used Walmart as an example, but you may want to have the routes from your ISP in your network to improve the routing. So you could have a default, you could have the routes from your ISP, or you can have the routes from the internet, which would be, I don't know, 740,000 plus probably routes. But then you have routes to everything. Okay. So that's an example. You could have another company here. Here I said Berkeley Fishing Gear. They probably have a connection directly to Walmart. Maybe they connect to Walmart this way, and so eventually maybe they would also want to use BGP to develop a good routing between, because they probably aren't connected to just one place in Walmart. They're probably connected to various Walmart locations. And they can do that outside of the internet. It doesn't have to be through the internet. Access list function at layers 4 and 3. Transport layer, we're going to look at these two. You can compare IP addresses, and you can compare port numbers. It gets a little more sophisticated than that later on, but that's what we're going to do. And initially, the access list we're looking at, we're just talking about a permit or deny. Are you going to permit traffic or deny traffic? And then once you get the list, then you decide you're going to check the list traffic coming in, or you're going to check the list on traffic going out. So we looked at a simple example. If we have a web server over here, and if you have, let's just say we have traffic from 2 different networks here, and we want traffic from this network to not be able to go to the web server, we could put an access list here that looks at if it's going to the web server, deny the packets. If it's going anywhere else, let it go, because they may need to go to a data server. There's so many different ways when you have a list, you can decide, what do we do first? Okay, do we look at the traffic and permit certain traffic to go somewheres, or do we deny traffic going somewheres and then allow the traffic to go everywhere else? Maybe this network, let's just say this network, I'll use another color. Maybe this network, they should only be able to access the web server, and they shouldn't be able to access the data server or anything else on this network. So you could check here then, you could have an access list in your router that checks the traffic coming in, and if the traffic's destined for the web server, send it. And if it's not, okay, then drop that traffic. Don't let that traffic go anywhere. So then this traffic could only go to the web server, couldn't even go to the internet, could only go one place, to this web server over there. So there's all kinds of ways you can manage that. So you got your list, then you apply the list to an interface either in or out. If they're extended, you always want it close to the source. If it's a standard access list, then you might want to apply that close to the destination, typically, because standard's only looking at the source IP. So, and it's a little harder. You couldn't narrow it down to a web server. It'd have to be all layer 3 checking. Okay, we're going to work on access list and get started in chapters 5 and 6 next week. We're going to look at security on switches and access and security at that level, and talk a little bit about quality of service. That is it.